This is a, oh, you ready, Butch? That's a go, all right. This is an official meeting of the Livingston Parish Master Plan Review Committee, today being Tuesday, May the 7th, 2019, 6 p.m. It was my understanding, I missed the last meeting, but we didn't, it was just kind of a informal get-together, meeting everyone. There's Mr. Ard right there, walking in just in time. Jeff, we just getting started. What I'd like to do is, if Ms. Sandy will call the roll, and then we can determine whether we have a quorum or not.
Ms. Johnson.
Here.
Mr. Sadler. Ms. King.
Here.
Mr. Burns.
Yes.
Mr. Carroll.
Here.
Mr. Abrams.
Here.
Mr. O'Neill.
I'm here.
Mr. Wascom.
Here?
Mr. Ard.
Here.
Thank you so much. Probably the first item of business that we need to pick up as a first-time master plan review committee is to appoint officers. So I would like to open this up for nominations for the chairperson. If no one has, or I'd like to start off by nominating Mr. Gerald Burns
I'll second that.
for chairman. Is that okay? I'm thinking I can put this in a motion, even though I'm not officially the chairman, so, and then second
You're
by,
the presiding officer.
okay, yeah. And so we'll second by Mr. O'Neill.
Right.
And is there anybody else for nominations?
Who made the motion?
I'll make it.
You can't, is it?
I'll make
Motion by
I'll
Ms.
make it.
Kayla Lockhart Johnson. Sorry.
I'll take one.
Okay, is that okay? All right. And second by Mr. O'Neill. No discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I guess there was no more opposition. Well, with that being said, I'm going to turn the chairmanship over to Mr. Gerald Burns, and then he'll probably take co-chair and everything else from there.
Thank you, Mr. John. Thank y'all very much for allowing me to be your chairman. Thank you.
Thank you for accepting it.
Ma'am?
Thank you for accepting it.
Oh, okay. The pay is pretty good, or what?
Yeah.
Okay, the next item on the agenda would be position of co-chairman. Do we hear some nominations for co-chairman? Would anybody
Never
like
thought
to?
about that.
Would anybody like to volunteer to be co-chairman?
I think Mr. Watson would make a great co-chair.
Excuse me, the audience is not able to speak just yet.
How about you, Dominic?
Y'all want me?
Ms. King.
Pass.
Mr. Abrams?
Okay.
All right, I'll make a motion, Mr. Abrams be the co-chair.
We have a motion on the floor, and
I just-
Mr. Abrams to be the co-chairman.
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Ard.
Okay, we've got a second by,
Mr. Ard.
Who made the
okay.
motion?
John made the motion.
I made the motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Item C is the committee secretary, and Ms. Sandy Teal has volunteered to do that. So we need a nomination. We need a nomination for Ms. Sandy Teal.
Huh?
You're an officer. Temporarily.
Temporary.
Temporarily.
So y'all can decide who you want.
Okay, temporarily though.
I'll nominate him.
We have a nomination for Ms. Sandy Teal temporarily.
Second.
Got a second? All right, call for the vote. All those in favor of Ms. Sandy Teal say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Thank you, Ms. Sandy.
I have a big request. When somebody makes a motion and a second, would you please repeat who made the motion and who made the second?
We sure
Before you
will.
call for the vote, that would be awesome.
Okay.
I'll help
Do you know
I have my
now?
back to them, and
Do
I
you-
don't know.
okay.
nobody
I'll
else.
help you.
Thank
Do
you.
do you know? Do you know to repeat it?
I do. Yeah.
Okay, who made the motion?
I did, Kayla
Okay.
Johnson.
Ms. Kayla, who made the second? Mr. Abrams?
Okay, thank you.
Made the second. Okay. On the other items for discussion, we're going to reverse the order 4 through 6. So we're going to go to 6. I have asked Miss Lynn Maloney Mudica, is that right? I'll tell you a little bit about her. She was on the original master plan team. She was the liaison between the parish and Mr. Jeff Winston of Boulder, Colorado, of Winston Associates. So she worked with Mr. Winters. She's at all the hearings, all the planning commission hearings, and all the hearings around the parish that I know of, and she knows all about this plan. So what we're going to ask her to do, if she can, is to come forward, introduce herself, about her company, who she works for, and help us and guide us maybe to what do we need to do to bring the master plan up to date. And with that, will you come forward, Ms. Lynn?
Good evening. Thank you for inviting us. My name is Lynn Maloney Mujica, and yes, I was on the Comprehensive Land Use Plan, Master Land Use Plan, between 2010 and 2013 when it was finally adopted. So that plan recommended certain tasks to be done to implement the plan. As far as I understand, and please correct me if I'm wrong because it's been a while since then, none of that was really implemented. I don't know that it's been used to guide any of your decision-making or not related to planning issues. But in order to implement the plan, of course, the first thing you probably would need to do would be to update the plan. And that's because Livingston's growing so quickly. You've had a lot of things happen since that plan. I worked on Pete's Highway, and of course Pete's Highway, the original design for Pete's Highway had some very interesting roundabouts and whatever. Well, of course, before it could even get off the drawing board, there was a senior center was built right in the pathway of that proposed right-of-way. So those are the things that need to be updated before you can actually implement the plan. But then we get, and the idea of a comprehensive land use plan is that all your decisions related to infrastructure, related to land use regulations, related to roadways, drainage, emergency preparedness, all of that would be done together so that your transportation wouldn't violate your floodplain management, say. You know, because transportation, a roadway is one of your biggest conduits of water. So you want it to be in the right place and not then, you know, get in the way of a good drainage plan. So things like that. And then you have, you know, and then there are a lot of other things that were in the plan as well. Again, transportation being one of them, where you might want to reserve some corridors. You wouldn't take them, you wouldn't ask for right-of-way, you would reserve them for future roads. You'd put it on a map, and if someone who owned the property came in and said, well, here's my plat, this is what I want to do with my property, you would say, yes, that's fine, but we need you to keep a connection for this future road, A to B. So if you would redo your plan a little bit, or they should actually look at it ahead of time and be cognizant of this will be a request that the parish would make. That's another example of how it would be used. Having said that, I think though, and discussions with Mr. Burns, the reason that we're here tonight is because my company, HNTB Corporation, is very, very involved in floodplain management and drainage. And one of the recommendations of the master plan, and something that I think we all understand since 2016, is how important drainage is. And in Livingston Parish, it's particularly important. And so everything that you do, every time you put fill, every time you put impervious surface, you're changing the floodplain. And so at Mr. Burns's request, I've asked our chief drainage engineer to come and discuss with you what a drainage master plan looks like. And this may be the first thing that you would want to tackle. Because to update the master plan cost in 2010, 2011, it was $450,000 to do it. Now, an update of that plan, it wouldn't be that expensive because the baseline has been laid. But it does need to be updated with all the new development, all the new roads, all the planned roads. What's going to happen is there's going to be an interchange at Pete's Highway. Are we going to have 4-H Club Road as is it going to be taken in by the parish? I mean, all of these different things. So that would be one thing, to update everything on the plan. But then the drainage master plan would be a separate, more detailed element of the comprehensive plan. And so we thought that that might be the first place you would want to go. And I'm going to introduce to you Miss Melissa Kennedy, who is our drainage engineer. She's working currently on master plans for Plaquemines Parish, for Ascension Parish, and for East Baton Rouge Parish. Yes, sir?
Before you introduce her, are you through? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I'm here to
I had some questions, and other committee members might have too. In the master plan, it calls, if the master plan has to be updated, it major updates and minor updates. In your opinion, does our master plan, which we done in 2013, and a lot has changed, that wasn't in there, like Juban Crossing and all the major developments north on the western side of the parish. Does our plan need a major update or a minor update?
I still believe that it could be done as a minor update. Because it would be, because mostly what we would be talking about right now is mapping. A lot of the recommendations, and I'm doing some of this by memory, but many of the recommendations I think still hold. Now, they may have to be shifted. An example might be the extension of Juban Road up north to
Lockhart.
Thank you. So that might have to be shifted at this point. I don't know what's happened up there or whatever. I don't know if they've done the roundabout at 190. I mean, there are all these things that I'm just not sure of. But I think that most of the recommendations would remain. It would just be a matter of updating the map and then adjusting those recommendations accordingly.
Adjusting
It may
for
also-
population?
Right, and population, schools, the whole thing. Flooding, we have a new flood scenario. When we were doing it, we asked people about flooding. There was a flood in that time, mostly Killian, maybe Springfield maybe was involved too. But it wasn't what happened in 2016. That's a game changer. So, and that again is why we thought maybe drainage would be, and again, Miss Kennedy can help explain to you.
One more question. Do you think we had a lot of public hearings in 2013 at the Planning Commission and around the parish? Do you see a need for a lot of public hearings
Well,
for this, to update this plan?
no, I don't think to that level, to that degree. Those were very, there were a lot of them, and they were very specific,
Yes.
and they were very focused. I think, though, that one of the things about the comprehensive master plan that was recommended, and I'm going to say a word, and I want everyone to take a deep breath before I say it. We talked about zoning.
The Z word.
The Z word, thank you. So, and one of the recommendations, again, I'm doing this by memory, was that we do sub-area plans. So that in those areas that are facing development pressure, you would go specifically to people and you would say, how do you want to grow? What do you think is appropriate in your sub-area? And so that was one of the ways that we talked about implementation. That, of course, never happened. I don't think we're ready for that at this point. I think that you would want to do the update first, get a better bearing on what you've got, where you need to go, and then you could break off those sub-areas and you could establish public meetings related to the sub-areas that you want to go to. There's timberland where frankly, nothing is going to happen anytime soon.
All right.
You know, so we would, and you remember the shape that we always talked about? It was the dumbbell shape. And it was Denham on this side and Springfield and Albany on the other, and then the I-12 corridor.
All right.
So those are the areas where you would focus, I would imagine. But again, it's up to, we would have to find out from people what the plans are, what people are thinking about, what they want to do with their land. Does that help?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, before you sit down, is the committee members, do y'all have questions of her?
And I know that you probably can't, I'm just estimating. What do you think the cost would be to bring the master plan up to what it needs to be at this point? Because it's one thing, we're gonna have to fit it in the budget for 2020.
Exactly.
So do you have any general idea of what that number is?
It's very difficult for me to answer that question. As I told you, I'm using my benchmark, the $450,000, but that was very, very detailed. As
Right.
Mr. Burns has said, we had a lot of meetings everywhere. So if we looked at maybe half of that, that might be reasonable, but we have to put our team together. And I would say, I mean, and we want to be very careful too, because if you put this out for public bid, we would like to compete for the work. You know, we would want to be, and we want to be sure that we don't misstep in any way in that regard. But in general terms,
Well,
I think
we're gonna
that
be asking
definitely-
other engineering consulting companies to bring a scope of work and the cost to us later on, and we'll be inviting you back, okay? So,
That would be
you don't
wonderful.
wanna tip your hand.
yeah. Well, we would, I mean, your budget, and let me say that whatever budget you're able to bring to the table, then we can scope it on that basis. You know, it doesn't have to be the whole hog. You're managing without it, I mean, frankly. So, again, we want you to think in terms of focus.
Okay.
What's the most urgent thing and whatever, okay? So,
Anybody got any questions on this side over here? Yeah,
John?
nobody? John?
Maybe ask the audience if they have a question. I don't know if you,
Anybody in the audience would have a question, maybe? You councilman, y'all happy? Y'all happy, all right. Okay, well, listen, thank you so very, very much.
Tracy.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tracy.
he'll catch it later, he said.
I'm sure I'll have a bunch of questions down the line.
Nobody else? Okay. Well, thank you so very, very much, and we look forward to you coming back and eventually with your scope of work and cost and et cetera, okay?
yes, it's
do thank you.
a pleasure, and thank you again
And
for
we
inviting
would like to
us.
hear. The next item on the agenda, we're gonna go to 5.
That's the next
That's
item.
item 5. Item 5 is a discussion review of the master plan for drainage in the growth areas. So I have asked Ms. Lynn to bring Ms. Melissa, am I correct? Ms. Melissa, would you come forward and give us your name and who you work for and what you do? And I understand you're doing a plan for East Baton Rouge Parish right now, is that correct? Would you walk us through what you're doing for them and
Sure.
what you might have to do for us?
Sure. Let me give you a little background. Again, my name is Melissa Kennedy. I am with HMTV Consultants here in Baton Rouge. You will notice I have an accent not from this area. I'm originally from the Chicago area. I've been working on projects in the southeast Louisiana area since after Katrina in 2000, 2005, so I've been very familiar with it, and I moved down here in 2014, so I've been down here 5 years, working on various projects. I call myself a water resources engineer. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily always the drainage expert, but I've been working on projects for over 30 years in various municipalities. I worked for the Corps of Engineers up in Chicago for about 15 years before going into the private consulting world. So I just want to correct you, I am not doing a master plan for Plaquemines Parish. I am working with Plaquemines Parish on some drainage related projects, but not their master plan. For EBR, we're calling a stormwater master plan, and for Ascension Parish, it's a floodplain management plan. The difference is that East Baton Rouge has a significant subsurface stormwater system in their community, so we're including that as well as what we call the floodplain management, which has more to do with the surface over land flow and managing your flooding, your floodplain. So East Baton Rouge is a little bit different, it's a little bit more complicated, it's got a lot more data as part of its plan. So essentially what you want to do with a stormwater drainage, or what I would call floodplain management plan would probably be most appropriate here, is you're trying to manage your risk of the damaging effects of floods. You want to protect your people and your property and maintain and enhance your natural floodplain values, make effective use of the water and water-related resources within the floodplain, and provide clear guidance on development within the floodplains and within the community. So there's generally a specific process that we follow. The first process, the first thing we want to do is what we call data collection, is to collect all the existing information related to floodplain stormwater within the parish. That means existing channel surveys, topographic surveys, structures, obtaining your land use information, flood damage history, LIDAR if it's available, existing models that are out there, all the information, your codes, ordinances, and requirements that all play a part in how you want to manage the floodplains and stormwater within your community. So usually once we do that, then we do what we call a gap analysis, figure out what data is missing, what needs to be collected in order to take that information and develop a plan. And for both Ascension Parish and East Baton Rouge, we did an intensive data evaluation of what existing information is there, and then we came up with what we call the implementation plan on how we're going to proceed with developing this program. And that's where we give an outline of the data gaps, what it's going to cost to get the data gaps filled, and then the cost to develop the plan and the time frame to do it. So that's usually what our first step is. And as part of that overall implementation plan or your floodplain management plan, the next thing things that you have to consider are, again, public outreach and engagement, similar to the land use master plan. You have to engage the public to make sure that they're part of the process, so that they're heard, and we're not just saying, okay, this is what we're going to do for you. We want them engaged in the process. So not only the public, but you also need to do your coordination with various stakeholders, whether that's developers, council members, administrators, etc. We want everyone involved so that they buy into the plan. And there's various methods you can do: public meetings, you can have a website, flyers, news media outlets, social media. The extent and level of public involvement and coordination kind of is dictated by what you would want to do and how involved you want. And obviously costs would probably play into that as well. So the first thing we do once we collect data, we want to assess where the flooding problems are. So we usually set up and do modeling based on the data collected, using existing models and expanding on those where necessary. So you want to figure out where is the flooding, what is the extent of flooding, what elevations, and then once you know what that is, assessing, well, what damage is that causing? What is your critical infrastructure? What other homes are being flooded? What are the roads, etc.? What are the hazards? What is being actually impacted by your flooding extent? And you might want to do that not only for your existing conditions, but you might want to do that for future conditions. That's part of what this whole process of public involvement and establishing some criteria. What are we trying to achieve? Trying to protect against the 2016 flood is probably not completely very realistic. It would be super expensive. But, you know, different areas might have different requirements. Certain areas it might be more of a local drainage problem. Other areas, obviously, as you know, it's a huge backwater flooding issue. Obviously, some Amy River, et cetera, Tickfaw, you've got a lot of channels and rivers in your community. So once you know what the problems are and where they are, then you want to kind of establish some goals. What is your criteria for fixing the problems? What do you want to do? Again, are we trying to, the whole intent is to reduce your risk of flooding. In some cases, there are areas that might be preventing flooding. It might mean moving people. It might be adjusting your land usage, and I hear zoning's a bad word, we don't want to use that word, but making those types of decisions on how we want to do that. So in addition, you also want to consider your codes, ordinance, and regulations on development. How do you want to see your area in the future? What are the concerns? Fill is a big concern, it's a huge concern in the other parishes that I'm working. It's been a difficult challenge on dealing with that. Also, you know, you want to maintain your conveyance and your channels. So there might be areas where we restrict development. There might be areas where in the floodplain, it's just you're too far down in the floodplain that in order to develop there, it's just economically infeasible. So maybe you want to make those a conservation type areas. So there's different things that you can do. So once you develop then what the requirements, what are those things that you want to do, then you come up with also projects. Are there projects out there in addition to codes and regulations, maybe a flood warning system? Are there projects that are feasible? And you come up with those list of projects and things that can be done. And basically your whole point is to come up with a plan. What are the things that you want to achieve? So as part of that plan, then you put in those requirements of what you're trying to achieve, as well as a list of projects and a prioritization of projects, along with the cost of all these things. So again, it's similar to the master land use plan, but it's focused on drainage and floodplain management. So I don't know if does that answer the concern. I have a little summary if you want me to leave that with somebody. It's just a little summary on kind of process.
It's a very good presentation. Thank you for that. I have a couple of questions
Sure.
before I ask the committee members. The plan you do in East Baton Rouge Parish, is it the whole parish or just part of the parish?
It's the whole parish,
The whole
except Central has their own community. They're doing their own plan. Otherwise, it's the whole parish, though there are some areas
Right.
where, like you have LSU, which has its own separate drainage system. So that's partially a little separate, but we consider the inflows and the outflows from all of those areas as well in the.
So whatever engineering firm that we wind up accepting, you could do half of Livingston Parish, not all of it, huh? You could do part of the parish?
I would say you do it by watershed, if funding is a concern, you don't do it, you do it by watershed, geographically, by
Okay,
watershed.
that wouldn't be a problem.
And actually,
Y'all
that
got
is the
any
way we proposed it in East Baton
Okay,
Rouge
you got
Parish.
any questions, Kay?
I'm
Yeah.
good.
You guys, Mr. Larry?
Okay, you familiar with Dewberry?
Yes,
What you're talking about sounds like the same type of study that Dewberry is already doing on the Amy River watershed.
they've done a high level, analysis. When you get down into the parish level and you want to get down into the smaller channels, I know what they've done, we've coordinated with them extensively. So I know the level.
That's what I was gonna ask, do you coordinate with Dewberry and their
Yes.
study that they're
We've
doing
been
now?
coordinating with Dewberry, we've coordinated with the Corps of Engineers, we've been coordinating with a lot of different entities.
What about FEMA and
And
their
FEMA, yes.
their rules and requirements?
That is correct. So that's all part of that whole process. FEMA is one of the ones that has the rules on some of the things you can and can't do in terms of floodplain management, yes.
We were having a problem with FEMA now with the flood program, and we don't wanna antagonize them anymore.
Other places are currently having a problem trying to get their hazard mitigation grant program
Yeah.
applicants completed as well. So, I mean, I understand.
Okay.
So, Melissa, in regards to the cost, since y'all were working with Ascension in East Baton Rouge, I mean, it's just right across the river, so would we be able to piggyback on some of those cost and studies that have already been created?
Absolutely. So, you know, we started actually, working in Ascension, so a lot of work we had done on the Amite River in Ascension. You know, part of our model extends up on Collywell Creek, can't say that one, Colliel.
Cody.
Cody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You gotta say
Cleo, great. So our model extends up into, in Livingston. We also then extended up into Baton Rouge. So we had a basic, model and second segment already completed so that we could just expand on that. And, we've also got the Amite River model from Dewberry. We had one previously done.
Okay.
We also have theirs. We're actually also working with the Corps, who is looking at certain segments in East Baton Rouge. We're doing the modeling portion just for those segments. So, but, and what the State Watershed Initiative wants to do with this is the modeling the whole state.
Mhm.
Again, those are gonna be higher level models that are gonna be, they'll be great if they get to them, and they'll be great as a starting point for people to then expand upon. So, I mean, that's the intent, is to take whatever existing information is already available and use that as your basis and starting point.
All right, I have a question for you.
Give Ms. Kay.
So I'm interested in the work that's already been done in different areas.
Mhm.
Do you find that there are grants where you can actually implement these ideas? Because if
Yes.
you don't have the funding to do it, it's kind of a waste to.
Yes, yes, and actually, you know, and I should have said, in both of these, part of the plan is to work on funding. How are you gonna be able to pay for these different things? And there are grants. There's the HMGP grant, there's the State Flood Control Program, there's the money coming from HUD, 1.2 billion coming from HUD that's supposed to be split up between, I'm not sure how it's going to be split up. Right now, that's under review or consideration, whether it's going to be focused on parishes that were most significantly impacted by 2016, or whether they're gonna spread it out more so across the entire state. But there's going to be that grant program coming up as well.
So is there benefits to research the grants first and let the implementation follow with where the money would come from? Or does it change too often?
I think it changes, and you need to know what it is you want to do before you know what grants are applicable.
Mhm.
So we come up with the plan, and that's
And
when we
then
see.
you
Yeah.
search for, the grant.
Yes.
Okay.
And we have in the comprehensive plan,
Anybody else?
one thing that won't change are those.
Mr.
those basins.
Go through, I'm sorry.
Big cheese.
The sub-basins and the basins that you have in your parish have already been delineated, and those won't change. So it can help you to focus on certain of the watersheds or something.
Right.
And that's in the plan.
Mr. Jeff?
I'm one of the councilmen here. We're in the middle of I guess you'd say, a heavy debate right now on land fee. Does it affect our floodplain? We have no restrictions right now.
Right. I would say it will, it does, yes. Because anything that's placed in the fill is taking away storage, and that water has to go somewhere else. Now, how much it affects, I can't answer without looking at it. I mean, you know, some areas have massive storage areas. You know, you're gonna get to a point where, yes, it's gonna have an impact, and may have an impact already, but yes, it definitely will have an impact. And I also wanna say, it's not only just filling, it's also where you're filling. And that's been a frustrating thing to get through, is because you can fill here and you can try to mitigate it, but if you're filling like very close to a channel, well, now you're affecting the way the water flows. So it might have flown this way before, now it's forcing to go this way where it wasn't going before, and you could be impacting your neighbors. So it's not just fill, it's also how and where you're filling.
Right. Mr. Abrams?
Yeah, I just wanted to like back up a little bit. So the master plan, it seems like deals with a multitude of issues, one being drainage, the other ones we've said it zoning, and a few other things. So are we tackling all of these things at once, or are we taking these piecemeal one bit at a time? Like I think
We'll talk about that in a minute, if you, what we can do.
Okay.
But we just asked her to come present what she was doing for East Baton Rouge Parish and give us her resume and her qualifications. Of course, when we get ready to select consultants for the master plan and consultants for the drainage, master drainage plan, then we'll have to put that out for bid. Okay, the parish will have to find funds through grants or operating budget or whatever, but we have a lot of things we can talk about besides just the master plan. You're right. Y'all have any other
To
questions?
clarify what Jeff was talking about and just asked you a question in that. I mean, in a parish this large, you know, because we've got a lot of square footage here, but our elevations are so dramatic, from the north to the south. And so for me, I don't see the fill being as significant in some areas as it is in others. And so if we blanket an ordinance out there, Jeff, and I think that's kind of where you were headed in what you were saying.
No, I just wanted to clarify that it does make a difference. I mean, we do have areas where, Zone X,
Yeah.
it doesn't.
Well,
It doesn't
pertain to
affect it
that.
all.
What-
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. But yet in other areas, it impacts significantly.
Well, we
A lot
have-
of places, you'll do the fill and you have mitigation requirements for in the floodplain.
Well, she can't answer that question right now. Do you have any other questions, you guys? Y'all have any more?
No.
Okay, well, listen, thank you so
Thank you so
very,
much.
very much.
Would you like this? I can just keep this. Just a
Yes,
quick
if you
summary.
would, we greatly appreciate that.
Our secretary will take care of it.
What I'd like to do is,
Thank you.
thank you ladies very much. What I'd like to do is, while we're on item number 5 for drainage for the growth areas, let me just, let me point out in the master plan, if y'all would go to page 70, be on the left side.
Go ahead, Jim, go ahead.
You read off
I left
of
out.
that. Paragraph 3, under actions taken, would be create a master drainage plan for the growth areas of the parish. Now, the master plan, as I see it, is broken down about 4 items that we're going to be talking about during this whole hearing process. One would be drainage. Second would be infrastructure, would be roads, utilities, water, sewer. And 3 would be the economic corridor. And also, number 4 would be land use restrictions. And that's the 4 areas that I think that this master plan covers. So while we're talking about drainage, the master plan calls for a drainage study to be done in the growth areas of the parish, and that would be primarily on the western side of the parish, I would think. We can do some of this plan. You don't have to have any updates to this statement right here. This statement stands on its own. You can do a drainage plan for the growth areas of the primarily the western side of the parish. I would like to pass this out, and John, if you do all of those, here, let me get 3. It's something that I wrote that we can look at. Basically, this is a letter of recommendation to the Livingston Parish Council, and I'll read it for the benefit. The Livingston Parish Master Plan Committee members voted unanimously to ask the Livingston Parish Council to provide funds to perform a master drainage plan study for the growth areas of the parish as outlined on page 70 of the Livingston Parish Master Plan that was adopted by the Livingston Parish Council in 2013. Localized flooding has increased due to the tremendous growth of residential and commercial development in the western side of the parish, especially north of Interstate 12 in the past 14 years since Hurricane Katrina. Let me point out in your first page of your master plan, there's an ordinance, LP 13-168, paragraph 5. It says, now therefore the Livingston Parish Council hereby adopts the Livingston Parish Comprehensive Master Plan entitled Envision Livingston. So the previous council in 2013 adopted this plan by resolution. Now, they did not implement it, so therefore I think it's our job and our mission is to make recommendations to the parish council to implement this plan. So if drainage is one of the issues, and there on page 70 it says we should be doing that through the master plan, I think we ought to send a letter of recommendation to the full parish council to find funds to do the drainage, the master drainage plan. What y'all think?
Now, wouldn't that be redundant over what she's talking about doing, or what?
Well, she's talking about what she done in East Baton Rouge Parish, but she can't talk about anything that's not part of a study. She might not do the study, but if you need to do the study first to determine all these other, the study has to come first. But that's what the master plan calls for. Then what she's talking about could be implemented. It might or might not be the way she's talking about. It could be different, am I right? It could be totally different. She don't know. You have to do the plan, you have to do the study first before you can make those decisions about what water and where it flows and so forth.
Okay.
And I wrote that up as something to discuss.
I'd like to make a comment on this recommendation that you just read. I don't have a problem with it. I just don't want the east side of the parish to be left out. I just
agree.
think it should be Livingston
Comprehensive.
Parish.
The whole
Absolutely.
Yeah, the
I
whole parish.
Yes, we have
100%
flooding
agree with
issues
that.
on
Yeah,
the
I
east
agree
side
with
as
that.
well.
I don't like the fact that it says western side.
Okay, well, I was only going by what the master plan called for.
Well, and I
In
understand
the
that,
growth
but
areas, but we can change it, no
we've
problem.
changed so dramatically since 2016.
Right.
And even not just in, because of the flood, but the population. I mean, let's look at what Livingston and Albany, I mean, that's all growing in
Absolutely.
leaps and bounds, and
Koyel.
And I think we have to look at this as, you know, the entire part. I don't.
We have to look at
agree
it
with
as
that.
a master,
We are
quote
one
unquote,
parish.
master
That's right.
comprehensive plan.
That's
And not,
And to
and not
leave out
have
the east
division.
side of the parish, I don't think we would be,
Mr. Mack, you okay
the
with that?
terminology would be correct.
So we're looking at doing the whole parish instead of
think
just the
the
growth
whole
area.
parish.
That's fine. I just brought it up for discussion so we can talk about it
I don't,
and try to get
I don't
moving.
think that we're ready for this. The way I feel about it is I don't like to waste taxpayer money. So in 2013, we did this whole master plan and it sat on the counter and didn't have anything done to it. So now we have to, $450,000, now we have to spend more money to update it because it never got implemented. So I think before we start doing more planning, we need to move through with some
Well,
implementation.
this is not a plan. This is a study that's recommended in action by the original master plan.
Well,
It's
but
not-
that's only just one part
But
of
at
it.
what point do you do this if you don't start now and start asking funds to do it? If you do if you don't start now, when are we gonna do it? We're
Well-
already 6 years behind.
I don't, I think that we talked about this the last meeting when we first initially met. We're gonna have to get on the budget for 2020. I don't think that we will be able to get any funds for this year, am I correct? Is that correct?
As far as I
But
know,
we
the
won't
budget's
know-
already
We
done.
won't know what the studies are until we hear presentations by all the engineers. We're gonna talk about this on item 4, is hiring consultants. To have other consultants come before us and do the same thing that these ladies have done. And I don't know how many, We did that under the original master plan. We brought, I think, four consultants, all brought their plan and their scope of work and their cost. We gotta do all that over again
Right.
on the update. And also, if you're gonna do the master drainage plan study, we have to do that too. We have to get a scope of work and cost from more than just one more. So you gotta start, this is just a letter of recommendation. Now, you might not get your money till the end of the year, but you got to know how much the study is gonna cost, and only you get that from is getting people to tell us.
And I agree with you with what you're saying there, but that's not a cost to have them come and do a presentation or put
No.
an estimate together. So I think that our process of interviewing over the next few months and then putting it together, am I misunderstanding? No?
That's
Okay.
what
Well,
Okay.
you gotta start asking the parish at some point to provide the funds. This is just a recommendation, that's all it is, to ask them, to tell them we wanna do
What's your recommendation?
the master
But how
plan.
can
What do
you
you guys,
ask
what do y'all
somebody-
think?
How can you ask somebody for money and you don't know how much
We don't know
money?
them.
You don't, so I think we need to get better, more informed as to what the cost is when
Okay.
we start interviewing these
Okay.
engineering firms. And then they could probably give us an estimate. It would be just like this lady said, I think
Okay.
maybe this much.
Okay, you
But if
guys,
we're gonna-
y'all all agree the same?
I agree with
Just
that.
hold up on this? Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
We're just trying to get a starting point and hit
Right.
the ground running, that's okay.
Well, I do
Then
think
we
we
can
need to
delay
move
this.
forward in having people come and the presentations and coming up more with a budget, and that way we can make
We can do this
an
recommendation
educated
and,
recommendation.
and make some changes on it later on down the road.
Okay.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure that there won't be some funding available if y'all do come up with a budget, because the way the sales tax increases have been being, I mean, we look at them every month, every 2 weeks. It's possible that Jennifer could carve out some monies, but we'd have to get a budget, get it to her, and let her see it. You know,
Sure.
you never know.
You know, if we did,
John, you think the same, I'm sure.
if we sent something to the parish council and said, look, we're working hard, we're gonna bring in some gravity drainage districts and maybe and some engineers and to help us get a master plan here. But parish council, it's gonna wind up costing us some money. Can y'all start now looking? I mean, if we make that recommendation, at least they can start looking. And, you know, they're not committed. If they find something, they can say,
Yeah.
hey, we found some here, and we can at least have something to start with.
So what you're saying is you want to put them on notice.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
coming
exactly.
down.
Look, we're
Yeah.
gonna do some work. We're gonna need y'all's support with some funding. Can y'all be, because the parish council has Mark Harrell, and we have a lot of other avenues that they gather funding for drainage and stuff. So it might be good to put the parish council on notice that we're moving forward. We're gonna need their support. Get them in that thinking mode. We want some money.
I agree with
And,
That
you
was my
know,
whole point.
I mean, I'm not,
John, do we have to give a report of what our meetings are about, our committee meetings? And in that report, I would say that's when you're saying.
that's when Mr. Gerald, and he would like to, you know,
Correct.
probably, I think he
I
would
agree.
report to the parish council and say what we all agreed here
Well,
today, you
I-
know, and,
The process of getting, I don't know, I think we had 4 consulting companies that give us the scope of work and money for the original master plan. If we start that process now on the master plan and the drainage, you look at the end of the year, probably. And meanwhile, the end of the year, you can't tell the council you need more money to do the plan. It's a separate issue than the master plan. It's one of 4 that I see. I just thought, I think John is correct, put them on notice, you need money.
I'll tell you something else that
And that's
does.
all, and that's all.
I'll say this last thing. We have like the Denham Springs News here.
Mm-hmm.
We have, this meeting is being televised. We have a lot of people that are very educated here in drainage, and the people in the state are gonna be paying attention. So just by us coming up and saying, look, guys, we're moving forward, you're gonna be surprised, maybe someone will come out of the woodwork and say, hey, here's an area for some funding for something. We're not going to the parish council saying what we're gonna do with it. We're telling, we're fixing to do something, be prepared, and be ready to support us in a study. So, I mean, they're not committed yet.
Look, I think that it's safe to say everyone on the council knows that this is gonna cost money.
Right.
You know, we just get a scope of how much it is. And scooters, King is correct. I think there's a possibility of a way for us to glean some money out in this fiscal year. But I am going to speak to the parish president about, you know, how much money, or putting some money aside for this study, for the studies that I know we have to update, we have to get done in order to impose or implement a master plan that's effective. Because we do have drainage issues, huge drainage issues, and we have, you know, infrastructure issues, and you know, a lot of those things can be solved by implementing a master plan that is intact and good. I look at the master plan that was presented, that was in place there. Even then, I think they limited themselves because of how little they wanted to zone stuff. And coupled with the 2016 flood, it really put a spotlight on the drainage issues overall. You know, I'm in agreement that, you know, when you do fill dirt somewhere, and I'm kind of going all over the place, but if you do fill it in like a zone X or way up high in the parish where the elevation's so high, it doesn't really have that much effect as opposed to someone who's in the floodplain on there, and they're building up really high. So, you know, these are the questions we need studies to answer in order to build a master plan that when we do implement it, it will be effective, and it will give us an avenue and a scope to move forward in this parish for the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years. Certainly don't want to hurt anybody. You know, we want to help the whole parish as a whole. We don't want to rush to it though and implement something that is, you know, ineffective. So I think the parish, the council is aware, everyone on the council aware that this is going to cost money. We're going to have to get some money cut out of the budget. If you know, if some this year, certainly next year, to implement revising this issue. It was refreshing to hear that a lot of the stuff has already been done, so we don't have to go back and get a lot of the material in this done again. But it definitely needs to be revised in a heavy manner. So it's going to cost us money. But you're right, Mark Harrell and those guys are good at going out and finding us grants.
So putting the parish council on notice would be a good thing, I think.
Absolutely.
I think having Mark do some investigative work, trying to see if, because as Melissa said, there are grants out there. So let's see what we can find in the way of grant money would be great.
Well, even if we do get grants,
There's still gonna be
matching
other
funds.
costs.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely.
We have to have funds.
But
to
any
match.
help would be greatly
We're
appreciated.
if y'all would wait just a second, in item 4, we're gonna discuss that in detail on how to move forward and getting Mark Harrell to find grants and how to advertise to the consultants like they did under the master plan. So, John,
Can I say something?
what you come to the podium?
Yes, sir. So there were two, I don't know if y'all remember this, maybe not, but there were 2 rounds for the comprehensive land use plan. The first round was what they called a request for, now I might get this backwards. One of them is a request for proposals, and the other one is a request for qualifications. And I think at the end, we did what was called a request for qualifications. You're looking for the most qualified consultant. And then, once you've picked the consultant team or company that you think is the most qualified to do the work that you decide you want done, then that consultant comes back and negotiates over a scope of work. The other way is what we call a request for proposals, where You provide a scope of work, and the consultants compete by putting together a proposal and saying it will cost X, Y, and Z, and here are the limitations of that. We'll only do this, we won't do that, we'll only do 3 meetings here, whatever, and they give you a budget. And then there's a formula that they use. It's not always the lowest bidder because you sometimes you want to get value for your money. So there's a formula that's used very often. Whichever way you do it, I mean, you're going to have, like you had suggested and wisely, you need to talk to people, and you have resources here, and ask them what the scope looks like to them, and that would be Mr. Harrell, it might be Sam, I say Sam, and some other folks. And also you want to talk to your drainage districts, because one of the things I remember from the master plan is that Albany and Springfield do not have drainage districts.
We do not.
And we had recommended that they tried to establish drainage districts, and that was in 2013.
Yeah.
In order to tax themselves so that they would be prepared and be able to implement whatever came down.
Yeah.
So, but my point is, there are people who have certain expertise who can help you in this manner. And you can always reach out to other consultants and ask them for it, but you just want to be very careful, because none of us want to get into an issue about, ex parte kind of conversation.
Thank you, Ms. Lynn.
You're welcome.
I could change the wording on this letter to plan study for all of Livingston Parish. I can change that if we leave the other stuff in there, but I firmly believe that we need to ask the council to be prepared, be on notice. That's all I'm talking about, really. So, John, what do you think?
I think that's fine, and like Ms. Eileen had mentioned, probably not putting a dollar amount, but letting
Right.
them know we're gonna be coming to you because
Well, that's why I didn't
just be
put it-
looking,
That's why I didn't put a dollar amount in the
So-
letter, because we won't know until probably sometime
Is
in
that,
that point.
are y'all okay with, Mr. Gerald presenting that to the council? Then if that's so, I'd like to put that in the form of a motion
For
John made the motion
For the entire parish.
for the entire parish.
for the entire parish. We need a second.
I second.
Ms. Kayla Johnson seconded. Okay,
Just
thank-
like one thing on this.
Sir.
It's especially, the last paragraph, you're basically focusing on the western side and north of I-12. Anything you do on the western side of the parish and north of I-12, that's.
Well, that's where he says he's gonna change that, the entire
I looked
parish.
at Mr. Larry because that's where the most of the complaints are coming from, that I understand. That's where the controversy is at, because you had since Katrina, really. You had such phenomenal
violence sometimes.
growth, and by bringing all these mega subdivisions in and large, it has caused localized flooding.
Cause them,
So that's why I put that in there,
Yeah.
okay?
but we're getting increased flooding on the southern part of the parish because of all the building and things that are being done on the north end.
So y'all want to strike that?
That's what you said, make it the entire parish.
I already did that.
Okay, well then
But
that would
but
get
the
rid of,
second parish, do we leave it second parish in there?
yeah,
You can just take the second
I
paragraph out.
just delete the
Take
entire
second
second
just, delete the second paragraph.
Okay.
Because it said, yeah,
I mean,
I just
we're
want
just putting them on notice.
I just want to clarify something about you, because you said you were going to put it in the form of a motion. So does this motion say that you're alerting the council in order to implement the entire, for the update of the master plan? Or are you just doing
No,
it
it's
for
not.
a master drainage plan
No,
study?
it's not the update, it's just the section on, page 70 that deals with
It's
drainage.
only on the drainage,
That is
that's
all
all
we're
you're.
talking about.
should we
Provide
ask-
funds for the master drainage plan study, that's all. Just the drainage, that's all we're talking about, so
Well, shouldn't we do
nothing
both?
else.
Well, Mr. Burns, if we're talking about potentially $250,000 to update this master plan that was completed in 2013, and if we're going to put the parish council on notice for a drainage, survey,
I see your point.
shouldn't we also say to update the master plan from 2013?
We can add that in there.
That certainly is a substantial amount
I'll
of
tell you what
money
I'll
as
do,
well.
I'll update it and, I might we'll just email it to everybody. Okay, and after we update it again, okay? Is that okay? Before it goes out?
That's fine, yes, yeah.
Then y'all, if y'all have some input on it, we delete, change, add, it don't matter to
Sure.
me. It's
So
just-
we don't have to take any action on that tonight then, on this then?
Well, if you wanna wait 30 days, you can. And that'd be June 7th. But if you take action tonight,
But for it to be legal, don't we have to do it in an open meeting, exactly how
so
we.
y'all wanna wait, we wanna wait until the next
I think
meeting?
this is important enough.
All right,
that
let's
we need
change
to
it
get
and we'll bring it
right.
back to the next meeting.
Because to me, they do go hand in hand,
Oh,
Okay.
absolutely.
so.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
That's good thinking. Item number 4, the ladies have left, and that's okay. Discussion, review, and selection of the master plan consultant. Now, I can only walk you through when they done the original master plan, how they done that. I know that they submitted, and you guys on the council can maybe chime in and tell us. The parish submitted proposals with a scope of work to all the consulting companies that do this type work. And some come and bid on it, some did not. I know there was like 3 or 4. I think there was one engineering firm within the parish that did, and there was some other ones within the parish. There was a lot of debate on that. A lot of debate between the parish president and the council in those days, so. We got to submit what we want on the master plan update and also the master drainage plan. We have to submit that to these consultants. How do we do that? Tracy, y'all know? Yeah? Who would, somebody in the parish government would know how to do that? Mark Harrell, maybe?
Yes, absolutely.
Probably Mark would be the best person to get. I mean, he's one of them all our drainage issues right now.
Sure. Well, you want to maybe invite Mr. Mark at the next meeting? Or
I think
somebody?
that'd be a good idea. I know Mr. Mark's fixing to go in the hospital, so I'll reach out to him and ask him if he'll attend our next one if he's back.
If he's available.
If he's available. I know he's fixing to go to the hospital, so.
If not, someone from his office might be available.
Right. And it probably wouldn't hurt to reach out to some of the local gravity drainage, to have them
Okay.
come speak on that as well, if y'all agree with that too.
Okay, so we'll get Mark Harrell at the next meeting.
I would like to maybe add one more thing. We're talking about drainage, but I'd like to come together at the next meeting and discuss if we're gonna talk about land use, what do you call it, restriction, zoning?
Not called.
If each member of this committee would get with your respective parish council member, and if Miss Sandy would get a map of, it's a starting place, is all I'm saying. Get a map and get it to each one of you, and then get with your council member, and then let that council member touch base with people in that area. And maybe we could start coming back with 9 different section districts in this parish and say, look, attentively, this is what areas that we want to focus on as far as commercial or residential. Then we could get those together and maybe start from there. It would be something just
Yeah. Mr.
a good starting place. If
Mr. Jeff,
unless
you
y'all got a better plan than that, that's the,
You think you can communicate well with your councilman?
yes, sir, I think so. How about you?
I'm mine. I don't know if I like mine.
A little hard to.
Mine needs to stay off of the fire for a while.
Oh, well,
well, I like my council.
He needs to stay in the fire.
What do you
Doesn't need to
guys,
stay in
y'all
the
want to chime in, Tracy?
Well, I think that from a zoning standpoint, I'm assuming that's what you had segued into there, Don.
well, if we're here to do this, so I mean, if we are, let's just start with the council members, since the districts are, you know, spread out, and
And what you propose is a good idea. Now, the majority, just like you, the majority of my district is already zoned.
and mine as well, but there's areas that's not.
But I would like to point out, that, you know, zoning isn't the end of the world. You know, they zoned Walker, you know, there was, you know, a considerable upheaval, and, you know, it went through, and the next day the sun came up, and, you know, and there's a lot of things that occurred that they're benefiting from that they don't realize, because the negative part didn't occur because of zoning. And in zoning itself, there are, there are degrees. You can residential or commercial, or you can just do rural.
You know, maybe, and you're right, I'm sorry, I got, maybe instead of us doing that, maybe at the next meeting, we could bring in people who do zoning from Denham, from Walker, and let them come in, because I know Denham and Walker might do theirs own different, R1, R2, C2, 3, and industrial. So maybe if we take the next meeting and learn, we could each all learn a little bit more about how it works, and then from there, we can, would that be a better idea? Would y'all be okay with that?
Let me
The
point
more
out.
we're educated, the better we'll be able to speak our constituents.
Let me point out to y'all one thing before you do that. I had asked another fellow about Richard M. Compton Jr. He has a company that was recommended by Mr. Jeff Winston, and he couldn't be here tonight to talk to us, but he is supposedly coming on June the 7th. So he'll take up some of our time, but I don't know. I'm just of the opinion that we need to concentrate on sending out proposals to consulting companies and getting them started before we start on zoning. I mean, that's the scary thing for most people in this parish. It's an unknown, but I'm just.
Hey, that's fine.
I don't look at it as getting started. I think it's just more education for us.
Right.
I mean, to
Yeah,
let us
right.
really understand how they're doing it in our
How they do it,
municipalities.
and, you know,
Miss Eileen?
Well, that's okay,
Do you
but
have
keep some room for Mr. Compton.
right.
And,
On the
and
meeting.
also if Mr. Mark Harrell can come here and kind of walk us through the submitting of the proposal to the consultants.
I know she had a question,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry.
Miss Eileen, do you have, in Albany, is there any
We
sort
do,
of?
but it's very limited. It was started on a committee several years ago and it really never took off. And I think it's probably because people really didn't understand it, just like I don't understand it. I would love to know more about it. How can I have a conversation with a constituent if I truly don't understand it? And we just had someone
Little
call
bit, she
the
said,
office
little bit.
today wanting to know about it.
You're
And
looking,
here I was
getting
just
people from Walker and Denham.
soaking up as much as I could to give this person the correct, I didn't want to give him an incorrect
Right,
answer.
right.
And,
Well, I'll invite whoever you want to invite. You just tell me who you want to invite from Walker.
I know you had a question in the audience, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry. Would you come to the podium, please?
Sure, and it's not a
Could
question.
you state your name, please?
Sure, Muriel Laws, and it's not a question, it's actually an observation. I think it's a brilliant idea to have people affected by the flooding to come in and give you more like a victim impact statement, but more like a residential impact statement, to give you firsthand how it's impacting them, because sometimes looking at somebody face to face, you can really get a sense of how the impact of the flood back in 2016. And I believe you can walk and chew gum at the same time. You can still do whatever it is that you can do, but still hear people, and that would help facilitate whatever it is you're going to do with the
Right.
master plan. You can hear firsthand, all the way down to Port Vincent. There are people who were truly
Well,
affected that you may want to invite.
I think most of us have flooded. I know I did. I can tell you all about flooding.
Yeah.
You too probably, huh? Y'all flood?
Well,
Well, anyway. Okay, thank you for your input.
Good, very good, thank you.
Well, I think what she says lends itself to what we're talking about. Even though our initial goal is to get this master plan revamped, updated, and get someone that's going to do it, hire someone, get some money to pay them. But while we're doing all that, we can entertain the ideas of zoning and gravity, drainage and zoning. We can still be hearing information of that, because ultimately, we're gonna have to make some
You're
decisions
right.
regarding those issues.
Right.
So we can multitask, I think.
Sure.
Yes, ma'am.
At the same
Sure.
time. But our main goal absolutely is to get this revamped and get us on a
Get
good
it updated.
roadmap.
Get it
Yeah.
updated.
Thank you, Ms. Allen, that's very good.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
You know, I mean, I'm sitting here getting a lot of information, and I think that it's gonna be even more if we, as the next meetings go. I'm not necessarily saying we even have to take action tonight. I mean, we know we got a plan for next meeting. I mean, unless there's just something, action you think needs to be taken, I'm thinking the next meeting's gonna be even be better.
We're gonna make some decisions, I guess, next week, especially about submitting proposals, and somebody from the parish has to help us do that. I don't know how to do that.
But I do think we
Okay.
need to have a very good understanding of what we are
Scope of work.
proposing.
What the scope of work is.
Yes, because before we go, what we do not need to do, and just in talking to different people about the field, we need to have a great understanding about a good bit of it, and not just try to push something through to get it through real quick, and then we've harmed other areas. I'm gonna use some of the north area, it's not a blanket effect. So let's just do our homework. It's just like studying for, a test. Do your studying, make sure you've got it right so you can pass the test. I think that's where we are right now.
Earlier when I was trying to ask a question, I guess that's what I was getting at too, since funds are limited and everything. I think another thing we need to do is prioritize. Mr. Burns, you said I think you said 4 different aspects of the master plan. What are the priorities here, and do we tackle them each, individually, or all at once, or what's the best plan of attack for those 4 areas?
Right.
I think that's true. See, the economic corridor is something we really needed to explore. If y'all haven't seen the map, it's on the hallway here on the right. And look at that, and we start talking about the economic corridor, what it brings. Some people want to do zoning within the economic corridor and nowhere else. Some just want to concentrate on the economic corridor and bring the infrastructure. The whole economic corridor issue was designed to bring infrastructure to the corridor. It runs a little south of I-12 and a little north of 190, about a little north of the Canadian National Railroad, and bringing infrastructure and to grow the corridor in industrial primarily, and grow the corridor. And so we can talk further about that. And once you get a consultant picked, then they can help us do all this stuff, you see. But I think that next meeting, one of our biggest priorities is talking about how do we get to the next level and hiring a consultant,
Well, I
and
think
picking one.
that's what just this lady was talking about that did this study here. You can go about it in 2 different ways. Either you hire one first on the
Request.
scope or on the task.
Qualification or on the
Yes,
task,
yeah,
right.
yeah. So, I
Yeah.
guess we need to
We're gonna need at least 4 consultants to bid. That's the way it happened last time.
Mr. McHugh had a question a while ago.
I'm sorry.
Mr. McHugh, do you have a question a while ago? I saw you. Oh, you didn't raise your hand? Oh, okay.
Scratching his head.
I appreciate it though.
I thought I saw him raising his hand, and he's probably burning up over there.
It's burning up in that jacket over
I'm
there.
here.
Yeah,
Okay.
here.
I will say that as far as putting the council on notice, I mean, there's 5 of us here. 4 of us is the finance committee. So I think the right ones that need to know are sitting here as far as the money and the people that need to.
We'll go ahead and look for funding in that, talk to Ms. Jennifer, Tracy, he's the chairman, so he'll look for that, get her on notice, try and carve us out some funds. If they're growing, put a little in the side for us, and I'm sure if it's there, she'll have no problem with that, no issue.
Well, the next meeting, we'll finalize the letter that goes to you guys, putting you on notice, so to speak.
Gerald,
Mr. Larry?
there's I've worked with the drainage district before. There's other avenues besides going through Mark Harrell for grants. The engineers we worked with, they were very familiar with state grants. There's state grants to do these that doesn't have to go through Mark Harrell. It can go right through the consultants and the engineers, and they can basically do all the legwork for you. And then we would come to the council and say, here, we can get this $200,000 grant if you'll give us $40,000, something of that nature.
Yeah.
And
So we-
generally, once you hire an engineering firm, they will tell you that we have staff that are versed in this.
Right.
They have people that look for those money. That's what they do.
Right.
That's how they make their
And it's a
money.
two-part issue. One
So-
is you need to know how much money you need and then finding the money.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Going back to who potentially would do the update on this comprehensive master plan, you said there were 4 entities that.
we had, I think, Miss, it was 4 on the original master plan. 4 people submitted proposals, scope of work and bids.
So do you think we should go back, that would be a starting point, going back
That's,
to them?
we have to
and-
do that.
And then ask for, call other people. Do we know of anybody else that has recently done a master plan or something like this?
Well, the
and
gentleman
some
coming next
engineers.
meeting has, I didn't, here's a copy of his resume. Does anybody else need one?
I had one for lunch.
So that would be 5 people?
Read that and, this guy is pretty good. He's got a pretty good resume.
Okay.
Does anybody else need one?
I better
I
got
got
one of
one.
those.
We gotta have, I would guess 4. It might, I'm sure the ladies over here tonight are gonna bid on it, but there'll be, have to probably be 3 more. So somebody from the parish, whoever it is, has to submit to the consultants.
So do we advertise for that?
They have to, I think so, yeah. There's a legal way to do that. I don't know. Do y'all know?
Yes.
The parish office would know they do it weekly. They advertise it constantly for different.
Mrs. Scooter, who over there in the parish?
RFPs.
And then you get the packets, and then you rate them, you score them as to their,
Sandy knows who it comes
and then
from.
whoever gets the highest score, that's who is selected?
Who is that, Miss Sandy?
Jennifer Fridella is our purchasing agent, and that is her job to go out
Jennifer?
for bids and request for proposals, and
Okay.
that's what Jennifer Fridella does.
So next meeting, can we invite her here and tell her what we want?
I don't know if she'll be able to come.
I think it might be something you can just
Hmm?
contact her about, and then we can kind of have. a
Well, if we
starting
invite
point.
her here, she can come, huh? Huh?
I don't wanna speak for her, but she has small children, and that's.
She's a finance officer,
If you
isn't
ask Mr. Layton Rex, her boss. to try and
Jennifer
move
Myers
on.
is the finance
Yes.
director.
She is the finance officer.
Jennifer Myers.
Maybe we
Jennifer
can bring her,
Fridella.
maybe we can ask her to come, huh?
I think it's kind of a road procedure. You advertise that you're looking for an engineering firm to do this. You advertise it in the parish journal, and then you give a return date, and, you might
Sure.
get 10 or 12.
But
And
that-
then,
That's what they do.
mhm.
If we bring her here and then we ask her to do that, if she'll come.
So we can ask her to do that.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's necessary.
Yeah.
Can you do that, Mr. Tracy?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think the question
Well, yeah.
should go to Leighton. I mean,
Sir?
she works under Leighton, so the question should go to Leighton.
Yeah.
to the
If
parish
we could
president.
secure
I
her,
mean, he's her boss. He's the one that has to tell her if she come to this meeting, not come to this meeting. If he wants to handle it, he might want somebody else to handle it.
Same way he's Mark's
Who's
boss.
your boss?
Yeah, he's Mark's
Leighton
boss as
Riggs.
well, so, I mean, I think Leighton Ricks is who we need to talk to about this.
Y'all want me to call Mr. Layton? Or y'all wanna talk to him?
I'll
You're the chairman.
I don't mind.
Well, you can call him too.
I think Mr. Carroll being the chairman, I think you should do it, and then if you need backup, call.
You go back me up, Scooter?
Look,
Yes, sir.
You can back up, call Cable.
protocol-wise, you
If
should
Layton
call
runs
him.
me out of the office, you'll back me up?
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
We'll send Kayla on him if he won't listen.
I think that'll help.
All right, I'll do that. Okay.
I don't think that helps, Jeff.
Okay. Anybody else got any other business they wanna talk about?
I will say that you were talking, the original layout where just the zoning was in the corridor, we have to think way beyond that. I don't think that's adequate enough.
Right.
Just, and I'm saying that just as a general statement to, all of y'all say, we have to go beyond the corridor. The corridor doesn't, I think it protects, and
There was a lot of things that wasn't a part of it.
yeah, the scope of that
Well,
needs to be expanded exponentially.
Well, the master plan, that's how it does, it sets steps for implementation. So that's just the first step, but it doesn't matter how long it is between step one and step two. You know, I mean, it'll all be something that's addressed, but it just tells you to start there.
One of the biggest things I think that needs to be considered is the airport.
Yes, that wasn't even in.
I mean, that wasn't even being talked about when this went through, and I mean,
Well,
if you're, the only, that area is not even in the corridor where that airport would go if it happened.
It's right close to I-12.
It only goes to I-12.
No, none
Doesn't go
south.
down
It goes
below it.
a few miles. I
Well,
think.
not enough to catch where the airport's, I mean, it
Well,
might catch a little bit of the airport, but
That needs to
How
come.
far is the airport from the interstate, Jeff, do you know?
what's that next road? Is that
Less,
Hood Road
within
down
a
there?
mile, I mean,
miles.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah,
Mile.
almost to Hood Road.
yeah, it's not, it's right there. You see it from the interstate. I mean,
That's just the
Oh.
entrance of it. It goes all the way down to Hood Road. though.
It's 2.5 miles for the front edge of isn't it 2.5 miles for
Yeah.
the landing strip?
Mr. Jeff, in one of my private conversations with Ms. Lynn, she brought that up, that the airport was not part of the original master plan. In the update, it would have to be included.
that's a very good thought, Jeff. That's great. I didn't even
She
think of
did
that.
say that.
Was that Epic Piping in there?
No, Epic Piping wasn't involved, but they're probably actually in the corridor. That's about how far below the interstate it goes. Probably just enough to catch Epic. I would think it probably goes down to
About
around where
Crazy
Crazy
Days.
Days is. That's probably about where it
Oh,
goes.
that
Lakeside
include
Estates.
them.
Well, anybody got any, new business? Anything else you want to talk about? It's not on the agenda?
Motion to adjourn?
Y'all done a good job.
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
That's your favorite motions, isn't it, John?
Oh, really?
Great.
We don't do that in Lakeview.
Really?
Yeah, that's a start.
Okay, show me, because I think a motion to adjourn has to take precedence over everything. I mean, now, you